I'll just go back to recap a little bit from Daf Dalet and Beis, because today we're learning Daf Hey Omid Aleph. So in Daf Dalet and Beis, we'll learn that it's speaking about there's a machlokes between Rav Yosef and Abaya. If we have the beam is more than 20 hours above the floor of the floor of the mavoi, and this person decided that he should raise the floor of the mavoi instead of lowering the kaira to within 20 amas. He preferred to raise the floor of the mavoi, and then there's machlokes how much of the floor does it need to raise in order for the mavoi to become kosher. So, according to Rav Yosef, he says it's sufficient to raise one tefach, a strip of a tefach, underneath the mavoi, underneath the kaira, to raise that strip, a strip of a tefach to the required height, according to Rav Yosef. And Abayas says a bigger share. He says you need to raise 4 tefachim on the floor in order to make it within the required height of 20 amas. So the Gemara is trying to explain, the Gemara is going to give a few possible explanations. What is the reasoning behind the argument whether you should raise the floor just 1 tefach of the floor is sufficient to raise, or you need to raise 4 tefachim of the floor? The first explanation the Gemara gives. So, okay. So let's understand the principle of how the kaira works. So, according to Rashi, the principle, according to this explanation of the machlokes, the principle behind the kaira is, yes, a kaira is mishum heker. The kaira is because you see it, it impresses you, and therefore it makes a difference between you can tell the difference between the Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabim. But that's not only that comes into play, but the kaira being a hacker, but when it becomes a hacker, it also blocks off and separates the Rishus HaRabim from the Rishus HaYochid, from the Mavoi. So therefore, the kaira has a 2 functions. One, it's two necessary functions for it to qualify as a kaira. One, there has to be a hacker, that people should be aware of it, and then also it also functions as a separation to block off and separate the Rishus HaRabim from Rishus HaYochid. Now, once we say it functions as a block to block off and separate between Rishus HaRabim and Rishus HaYochid, so then the question is, which part of the kaira of the beam separates? Is it the inside part of the beam that creates the separation? So it's as if the inside part of the beam, there is like a fence, so to speak, coming down from the top of the beam, and it's blocking off all the way to the floor, or is it the outside part of the beam? And therefore, or it's the outside part of the beam, which the outside part of the beam, the last part of the beam is sort of coming down and blocking off and separating. Now, if we say it's the outside part which is coming separating, then that means underneath the kaira, one is permitted to carry, because underneath the kaira, that is part of the Rishus HaYochid area. If you say that the inside part of the beam is the side of the inside part of the beam, that is what's coming down and separating between the Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabim. So that means that underneath the beam, one is not permitted to carry. So whether we have a machlokes whether you're permitted to carry underneath the beam or not. That's okay. Now, so therefore, according to Rabbi Yosef, he says the outside part of the beam is what's coming to is what blocks off and separates between the Shus Yoch and Shus Rabin. So therefore, if the outside part of the beam separates, so therefore, as long as I have underneath the beam an area where there is a heker, so an important area, and it is important. What establishes this area as being significant? A significant area, say, a significant area, because that's the area underneath the beam, so it's significant. So if the area which is underneath the beam, which is a significant area, which is one tefach, by the way, so if that significant area has the heker, it's fine. So the significant area of the Mavi has a heker, so that's good enough and makes the Mavi kosher. Whereas according to Abaye, he says that the inner part of the beam is what comes down and blocks off between Shus Yoch and Shus Rabin. So therefore one is not permitted to carry underneath the beam. So according to that, there's no point to having a heker underneath the beam because that you can't carry. That's already the area which you can't carry. So therefore, the heker has to be inside of the beam. So therefore, you have to raise the floor inside of the beam. That's where the floor has to be raised. Now, once it's inside of the beam, a significant area is only called if it's 4 tefachim. Less than 4 tefachim is not considered a significant area. According to Rabbi Yosef, the 1 tefach was considered a significant area because it's significant with the fact that it's underneath the beam, which the beam makes kosher the whole movie. So that turned it into a significant area, even though it's only 1 tefach. But usually, if it is no beam it's not underneath the beam, there's nothing to turn this area into significant. So the normal significant area is the minimum amount is 4 tefachim, and that's why Rabbi Yosef says it needs to be 4 tefachim. Okay, then the Gemara says this is all from Rashi. Then the Gemara says, "Loy the kula alma." So the Gemara says no. Both Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Abaye, they both say that one is permitted to use the area underneath the klei, and therefore, yeah, right. Permitted to use the area underneath the klei. And they argue in the very what is the reasoning behind the Korah permitting you to carry? So now, according to this, it's a bit easier to understand here, this like is than the previous one, which was a bit of a mixture of heker and sort of mechitza type of thing. And this is easier to understand. And it says, because Ma'asovim Shum Korah. So one of them says that the reason for Shum Heker, the reason why the Korah makes the Mobi kosher is because it's there, so you recognize it, and therefore it reminds you about not carrying into the Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, if it's Heker, so therefore, underneath the beam is also kosher because the Heker is there. The whole area of the beam is a Heker, and right. And so therefore, since the area of the beam is a heker, so therefore, 1 tefach is sufficient because that area is a significant area. The area underneath the beam is significant. Okay. Now, Umar Sova, the other person holds. So the Rabbi Yosef says only a tefach, because he holds the reason is because of heker, and therefore you have a significant area underneath, which is a tefach, and there's a heker over there. As long as you have a heker, so therefore that's fine. And Marsov, the other person says, yes, okay, yes, you're allowed to carry. True, the outside part of the Korah is considered the top of the mechitza, blocking, separating between the Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabbi. So this is Abaye. This opinion is Abaye. So he says the reason of Korah is not because of Heker. The reason because of Korah because it constitutes a mechitza and not with Heker. And so therefore, if it constitutes a mechitza, he needs it to be in a proper category of a mechitza, more than what was mentioned before. Before we spoke about blocking off between the Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabbi. Here we say if the Korah the reason why Kaira makes the Movi kosher is not because of Heker, but because of Mechitza. Now, Mechitza, the din of Mechitzas, Mechitza makes a Rishus HaYochid. That's what Mechitza is. Yeah, Mechitza. The din of Mechitzas is that it fences off an area, and that area becomes a fenced-off area. So, what is the concept of a Mechitza? The concept of Mechitza is to make a fenced-off area. So therefore, you have to have an area which becomes fenced off. Now, even though maybe the area underneath the beam is significant, because the way we're saying now that even the person who wants a bigger amount, a buyer who wants a bigger amount, even underneath the beam is kosher, but it may be significant, but it's not good enough to be significant. There is a din of a mechitza. A mechitza means it fences off an area. If it doesn't fence off an area, it's not a mechitza. And the minimum area for which the mechitza should be called a mechitza is if it fences off 4 tefachim. So, and therefore, even if you're allowed to carry underneath the beam, nevertheless, it cannot. The outer edge cannot become a mechitza unless it's going to fence off an area of 4 tefachim. So therefore, you have to raise the ground 4 tefachim. That will become an area which is fenced off by this mechitza, which is from the Korah downwards. So that's the second opinion. The Iboy is saying, the Kul Alma every holds Korah Mishum Heker, and this is the I think the final one. So everybody holds the Mishum Heker that the reason for a Korah is not because it creates a mechitza, but because it's recognizable. Therefore, it will remind you that outside is Yochid and here and inside is different. But the thing is, if you want to make it 20 amas, so and the movi is lower than it's more than 20 amas between the movi and the Korah. So it's not enough to have the heker of the Korah. You have to have the bottom part should also be a heker. So therefore, there has to be the whole area has to be. You have to see a bottom and a top, and the top has to be within 20 amas, and the bottom has to be within 20 amas. So they're arguing about the heker shemaila and the heker shemata. The Masav one says heker shemata ke heker shemaila. That the heker underneath, the bottom part of the 20 amas is good enough that it should be like the mila, like the heker above. It's one with the wide one tefach. That's sufficient to make a heker, and therefore the underneath part of it of the 20 amas is also the same. What tefach is good enough. One says no. Now for the up there to be a heker, it's one tefach. It's already tefach up there. It makes you realize but on the floor for the realization to hit you on the floor, it has to be a bit of a larger area, and therefore the heker shalmata has to be 4 tefachim. And by the way, the halacha is that we accept that the reason of Korah is mishum heker, not because of azov mechitz. Okay. The Iba is saying another explanation of what they're arguing. Everybody holds heker shalmatik is heker shalmaila. It's a heker. It's fine. You know, if a tefach, if you have a tefach on top and you have a tefach underneath, it's good enough for a heker. You know that there's a difference here. There's something here which creates, which to remind us, and that's fine. Because it's just Gzeira that Rabbi is worried that people stepping on the raised area will rub it out, and so therefore, if it's only one tefach, it will very quickly be rubbed out, and then you'll end up having the distance will be more than 20 amas between the Korah and the floor area. And so therefore, he wants a stronger, more stable matter. So it should be made of 4 tefachim, and therefore you shouldn't worry about it getting rubbed out. Okay. Now we're coming to the next piece of Gemara. What happens if the Korah, till now we're speaking about the height of the Korah, if it's above 20 amas. Now, what happens if the Korah, the beam, is less than 10 tefachim? So you have the mavoi, and you made you made the beam less than 10 tvachim high. Maybe there is one way of explaining this, that not just not just the beam is less than 10 tvachim high, that even the rest of the mechitzas, of course, you have buildings in the mobile, you have houses, but the fencing all around the fencing all around the mavoi is only 10 tvachim. Let's say we have houses and everything, but the front the fence of the front gardens are less than 10 tvachim, and then of course you put the kaira, you put the beam over the edges of the fence, and so therefore the beam also ended up being less than 10 tvachim high. Okay, that may be a good way of understanding. So. So if the beam, the practice, the beam is less than 10 tvachim above the ground. So what do you have to do? So you have to dig into the ground to make to make there should be at least the minimum distance of 10 tvachim. So the chokuk by lashlim elasara, and you dug into it to make it 10 tvachim. How much do you have to dig in? So the Gemara says, sorry, I don't understand. Till you reach the gap is 10 tvachim. Elo moshche b'kama. How deep into the mavoi do you have to dig? This, you make it 10 tvachim. So how deep do you have to dig into the rest of the mavoi in order for this the beam to make the mavoi kosher to carry? Okay. So Rabbi Yosef says, see again here we have Rabbi Yosef and Abaya, and Rabbi Yosef says a smaller amount, Abaya a big amount, but they're all bigger than the previously mentioned. So Rabbi Yosef says the dalet 4 tvachim zema, and Abaya says be'arba amas that you need to have 6 foot arba amas. So the Gemara says. And that is the reason for this machlekes is because because you have to make a movie there. If you don't have to make a movie, right? So you have to make the size. You have to dig out the size of a movie, and that's the machlekes and the berbeis and baya. How much you have to dig out? Because you have to dig out. You have to dig out to so deep in the movie. The whole of 10 tvachim has to be dug so far into the movie till that the area which has been dug out is considered as a movie. And once that's considered as a movie, and then you can carry the rest. You can carry the rest of the movie as well, which is higher up. But you have to have this part which makes halachically considered a movie. Okay. So the Gemara said, that they're arguing that Rabbi Yosef and Abaya are arguing in the din of Rabbi Ravas. We learned remember, because the Rabbi Ravasi, they give an amount of what's the depth of the size of a mavu. Mavu shenifritz. So now it's a different halach. Mavu shenifritz mitzidek operation. That there is on the side of the mavu, the side walls of the mavu. So one of the side walls of the mavu has broken and fallen. So therefore there's an opening. There's therefore an opening on the fencing. The fencing on the you have the front of the mavu where you have the kaira, then you have the back of the mavu, then you have the sides. So the side of the mavu, but towards the side of the mavu, towards the entrance of the mavu. So the side of the mavu, the part of the wall has fallen down and been broken. So now, so we learned in the name of Rabbi Ravasi, im yesh shom pas daled matir bepirza ad eser. That if you have a block of wood or part of the mechitza which is 4 tfachim. So if you have the last 4 tfachim next to the entrance of the mavoi, that's fenced up the last 4 tfachim. Either you put a fence in, maybe if the whole thing is broken, the whole side is broken down, so you put in a block of wood which is 4 tfachim wide, and you put it there. The kitzer, that next to the entrance of the mavoi where you put the kaira, next to there should be at least the first 4 tfachim from the mavoi should be wall, first 4 tfachim, and that is good enough. The pirza ad eser, if the collapsed part of the wall is till 10 amas. Once it's more than 10 amas, then it's a pirza. Then you have to fix that. But if it's less than 10 amas, so then it's considered a pesach. So as long as the pesach, which is from the collapsed wall, which created the pesach, as long as the pesach doesn't go right up to where the kaira is, and the last 4 tfachim of next to the kaira, there is a there is a fence there. So then that is okay. The imlav, and what's the reason? What's the reason for that? The reason for that is because it can only be considered the pesach, the kaira. Why is the kaira permit you to carry? Because the kaira permits you to carry because that's a tikkun which you made to the pesach hamavui. So if you have a mavui and you have a pesach hamavui, you have the entrance to the mavui. So if by the entrance of the mavui, so you need to fix it with a lechi or with a kaira or whatever. So this whole din of kaira and lechi, that is by the entrance to the mavui. So if you don't have 4 remaining tfachim of wall next to it, then that is not considered. That's not considered entrance to the mavui, because the minimum, the entrance to the mavui must be next to the mavui. So if the entrance to the mavui is next to the mavui, so if it's 4 tfachim, so that's considered mavui. 4 tfachim is considered mavui. Okay, so if that's considered mavui, so then the entrance which you have where the beam is the entrance of the mavui. So that's kosher. But if there's no 4 tfachim of wall next to the beam, next to where the beam is, so then that is not an entrance. The place where the beam is not an entrance to the mavui, because there's no mavui next to that. It's broken, and so you need to have at least the shear of a mavui next to the entrance for that to be considered an entrance to the mavui. So, and if you have that shear, then it's okay, even if the broken part of the wall is still cubit. If not, so if the breakage is less than 3 tefachim, the breakage less than 3 tefachim, we say lavud, it's all connected, that's not a problem. But at the moment it's about 3 tefachim, that creates a problem because you must have the mavui next to the where the kaira is. Okay. So therefore, what do we see from over here? We see from over here that the 4 tefachim, that makes it considered mavui, and therefore the kaira, which is next to it, considered entrance to the mavui. So therefore we see 4 tefachim is a mavui. And the Rabbi said 4 amas. No, the Rabbi Yosef is the Rabbi less than the Rabbi. So Rabbi Yosef agrees with Rabbi that 4 tefachim constitutes a mavui, and the Rabbi says no. Yeah, the minimum size of a mavui is 4 amas, not 4 tefachim. It's a question of Rabbi. The Gemara says, Rabbi will say to you, "Awesome, safe mavui, hachat chilas mavui." He'll say to you like this: "It's hachat chilas mavui. Ika arba amas ein iloi iloi." So it says this, that if it's to make a mavui is arba amas. That's a normal mavui. Another mavui, the minimum normal mavui is arba amas. Here we're talking about the end of a mavui. In other words, there is a mavui there already. In the case of the in the case of the digging, because there's no walls, which are the whole, I mentioned before, that the walls around are not 10 tefachim, so there's no real mavui there. So therefore, at least next to the next to where you're making the beam, you make a movie over there, and then the rest of the movie will become part of it. So you have to make a proper movie. So then you're creating a movie. So when you're creating a movie, it's only considered if you create a proper movie. If you have to, a proper movie is Arba Amas. There's no question. That's what Rabbi says, not like Rabbi says. He said Arba Amas, that's the proper movie. But in the case of the fence over there, the reason why by the fence it's okay and it's considered a movie with 4 tfachim, because there it's the remnants of a movie. There is a movie there. It's a movie, and the wall has form. So the movie is there, and because the wall has fallen, so it's considered as if the movie is it means the wall has fallen, so therefore it means that part of the movie has disappeared. So there's no movie next to the thing. So when you're building it, you're not creating a new movie. You are just it's enough to be considered. Maybe that's a good word. It's enough considered the remnant of the movie, because there was a movie there and everything was built, and some of it fell, and this is a remnant of the movie. So a remnant of the movie, so you can have a smaller share. So that if it's less than that, it's nothing. It's not part of the movie. But if you have that share, it's considered a remnant of the movie. And so that it combines with all the rest of the movie. I saw in the Rashba it says that normal mavui is 4 amas. That's normal mavui. But sometimes here, there, very rarely you get much smaller. So that will help us to understand about a shita that here normal mavui is 4 amas. No, to be considered the remnant of a mavui is something. If sometimes you have such situations, very rare situations. You make this. So normally you can't. If you're making a mobile, that's not considered a mobile. If you have a remnant of a mobile, because there is a mobile, they just fell, the wall just fell, and you're just fixing a bit of it, but the rest of the mobile, everything is still there. So it's a remnant of the mobile. So then it qualifies. It's still considered. That's already mobile, because sometimes you have a mobile that size. That's which my taking from the Rashi. Anyway. Okay. So therefore, so in other words, that Rabbi Yosef says there's no such thing. 4 tefachim, that's the size of a mavoi. That's Gamarnu. Masechta Abaya says no. That a new mavoi needs 4. A remnant is something. But I don't know where they know it from. Tanya, you can prove that you need to have 4 amas. Tanya, what the Bride said, any mavoi need to have the actually you back the Okay, this is very important halacha. That what that a mavoi is not considered a mavoi, and that to permit a mavoi is more lenient than permitting a chotzer. If you have for instance, your garden and it's open, so then you need to have more than just a lechi. A lechi is not good enough. You need to have at least a piece of wood 4 tefachim, or to make a lechi on both sides. So there's a leniency which there is in mavoi, as opposed to having your front garden open and set. So it's that leniency. So the leniency which is a mavoi, so there has to have a mavoi. When is it considered a mavoi? If you have at least 2 houses going into 2 courtyards and into 2 front gardens. So 2 houses to each of the front gardens. So you have one courtyard which has 2 houses, another courtyard has 2 houses, and then those courtyards, so there's 2 entrances into the mobile. So you have to have 2 entrances into the mobile, the minimum. Actually, right. So the minimum you have to have is 2. You have to have a minimum of 2 of 2 courtyards, and where the Pesach, the entrance of the courtyard, is in the mobile. The Ibadalet, if you say that what you have 4 tefachim, Rebbeinu Shalom, 4 tefachim is the whole mobile is a side square. 4 tefachim, how can you have 2 entrances? You have what from the right, from the left, and there's not going to be any walls of the mobile if you have an entrance. Now, an entrance, we discussed this earlier time. An entrance is the minimum size of an entrance is 4 tvachim. Not clear. 4 tvachim is according to Chaim Noah's share, it's about 12 inches. Okay, so that's 4 tvachim, 4 times 3. Now, so the minimum size of the entrance is, if you say the minimum size of a mobi is 4 tvachim, which is 12 inches, and the entrance, which is the entrance to the chotzer. The entrance to the chotzer, by the way, the entrance to the mobi also has to be minimum 4 tvachim. If it's not, because if it's less than 4 tvachim, the entrance to the mobi, it's also not an entrance. So all these entrances have to be 4 tvachim. Anyway, so if you say that it's the depth of the mobi is only 4 tvachim, so and the chotzer at the side, the chotzer at the side. So how they have to have an entrance of 4 tvachim? So that means that there's everything is open. There's no walls there. There's nothing. It's just open. There's no mobi really, because if the depth of the mobi is 4 tvachim, and the entrance is of the chotzer is 4 tvachim, which is open. So it's an opening. There's no mechitzas into this mobi at all. The kitzur. So therefore, it must be the depth of the mobi must be more than 4 tvachim. You can't say it's 4 tvachim. Okay, so therefore 4 amas. Right. So yeah, okay. Here we have the Gemara comes up with maybe a bit of an answer, maybe not like a by. Here by himself is even arguing. You'll try and tell me that the pasuk no. The sides are only 4 tvachim. The depth is only 4 tvachim, but it's the back part, the back wall of the mobi is very wide, and the chetzeres they enter into the back part of the mobi. So the back part of the mobi, that is where the entrance to the chetzeres are. The sides are like blocked up. So Omer Rav Nachman says Naktinon. We learned so there's a principle that when is considered a mavoi, which you can use it and use the hechsher, the leniencies which there is in being matter a mavoi, if it's longer then it's wide. So kitzur, the depth of the mavoi has to be more than the width. So if you can't make that the back side of the mavoi should be wider than the sides. So therefore, you can't put the 2 entrances. The 2 entrances have to be on the side. 2 entrances have to be on the side. So how on earth you're able to have an entrance of 4 tvachim when the whole mavui is only 4 tvachim? So that means the mavui there's no fencing at all there. And what about the pillars for the entrance? Anyway, so the Gemara says. Sorry, I forgot to read the word. That belongs to part of Rav Nachman, that you need to also have the houses and the courtyards opening into the mosque. Okay, so it's a very good proof. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef, the Pesach lo b'kanzot. The Pesach lo b'kanzot. He makes the entrance at a slant. It's not the pshat that it's not the pshat that they're the side. Yes, the entrances are the side, but the entrances are a bit on a slant. So therefore, the entrances, they don't start at the beginning of the mavui. So let's say the first tefach of the mavui is you have the pillar of the entrance, first tefach of the mavui, and then the entrance they are at an angle. The entrances to the chotzer are an angle. So therefore, that means they'll take up part of the back of the mavui. It becomes narrow. So the mavui becomes narrower as you go back, because the pesach of the chotzer is at a slant, and they go in at an angle into the thing, and therefore then you can have 4 tvachim. There's a bit of a Rashi and Tosfos, and you see all these pictures. They're trying to work out how do you get the pesach of 4 tvachim. But let's not go into it. Just that it is possible to have, if you put it at a slant, it is possible to have. You're seeing what you see in these pictures are the diagonals of the Pesach. So the egenos of the Pesach is 4 tvachim, and yes, it means that the mobi is going to be narrower at the end and broader at the front, and therefore it will fit in even a Pesach into a mobi of 4 tvachim. So Abai says so a little bit we've sort of pushed away Abai's reason proof from this thing, because we sort of answered the agonal. It's quite difficult to understand, but okay, it's a terrace. Amar Abai Menoah brings different right. The Amar Rabbi Bachoma Amar Abuna Lechi Haboilet Midoifne Shel Mavoi Pochos me'arba amas nidem Shel Lechi ve'enet Tzorich Lechi Achal HaTiroi Dalad Amas nidem Shel Mavoi ve'Tzorich Lechi Achal HaTiroi. So what have we said over here? That if you have the entrance of the mavui, so the wall of the house which is there, or whatever, the wall of the house extends into the mavui. So the wall of the house extends into the mavui. So even though it was built wasn't built specifically for the lechi, it wasn't made, but the fact that you have some of the wall of the house or whatever you have over there, the fencing, so some of the is extending into the mobi. So some of the wall is extending into the mobi. No, that counts as a lechi, and we don't need another to make another lechi. If it extends 6 foot, arba amas. So then what are the words? We just said it. Nidem mishumobi. So then those 4 amas, it's not a lechi anymore. Those 4 amas are a mobi. It's like it's a whole part of the street. So therefore it's nidem mishum. But sorry, lecha hatiris. Then you have to add another lechi after the arba amas. What do we see from over here? We see from over here that if the part of the wall is sticking out in and covering up the entrance of the mobui, it's considered a lechi, even though it wasn't done specifically for a lechi. If it's done specifically for a lechi, of course it's good. But if it was not done specifically for a lechi, so then if you make dalad amas, it's not considered a lechi anymore. It's considered that this is, there's a path here. There's a part of the alleyway. It's part of the street. So you see that dalad amas constitutes a mavui, and since it constitutes a mavui, so therefore it loses the din of being a lech. So therefore, and since the amount is 4 amas, so they will see that 4 amas is a mavui. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef, "Afukim materis lechi ad ikar ab amas." The mevi mavui, I feel about tfachim nama happen. So again, Rabbi Yosef says, he says, you know what? To make it a mavui that you can't even consider it a lechi, that is 4 amas. But if it's a normal mavui, is 4 tefachim is a mavui. Except, you know what? A lechi could also be 4 tefachim. So a lechi can also be 4 tefachim. So you have a 4 tefachim lechi. Just because it's a mavui doesn't mean that. But we have when you have 4 amas, that's for sure. I think that will fit in much nicer with what the Rashba says, that the normal minimum for a mavui is taka 4. But sometimes people make it a mavui with less or whatever it is. So therefore, we can understand Rabbi Yosef very well. That sometimes it's a mavui, so it's good. But that people should not think of it as a lechi. It loses its status as a lechi. That's only if it's unquestionably a mavui. If it's something which is bedoichik a mavui, that does not make it lose its status as a lechi.